Within the past week, I've had both the Retroid Pocket Classic arrive and the new screen and front plate for the Retroid Pocket Mini. Now I should point out that even though the Mini is still on the Retroid store, it is actually sold out, and there's no news that they'll be selling it again in the near future or even with the new screen. For those not aware, when they sold the Mini in the beginning, they were actually hiding a screen under the front of the shell that is exactly the same as the new Classic screen. But what they did is they packaged and set it up in a way that it would display and we could only see a 4x3 screen. And it was never disclosed they did this. So it was due to odd scaling and shader behavior that led to this absolutely crazy discovery, and Retroid really should have just produced the Mini with the bigger screen in the first place. So I'm sure there'll be a camp that'll be all for what Retroid did, and as clean as it looked, it really does just look better and probably would have sold a lot more if they did this in the first place. It even creates a reason to have it over the Retroid Pocket 5, which sold at the same time, as I'm sure people would have had more of a use case for a near square screen over a 4x3 screen. Because of this, we are now here where if you weren't trying to get a refund, then Retroid offered a brand new black shell with the front displaying the entire screen, which you then had to flash after gutting your original Mini to put it into the new one. I won't be going over this, but there's an officially bad video by Retroid on how to do it, but fortunately there's some more helpful ones out there too. So now we're finally here. And this is actually a way more interesting comparison than I was expecting it to be, as both devices have some great pros and cons about them. Off the bat, I want to say that I think these are both top tier devices. Like at this point in time, I love that I have these to take around as pocketable devices, and I want to just keep playing them. I've always liked the Mini, but now I want to play it more, so this is a perfect opportunity to compare them. Now let's get a huge point out of the way where the Classic just wins big because it is $129, whereas the Mini was around $200 on its release. That's a huge difference between the two, and if you already know you don't care much for sticks or triggers, then the Classic is the clear winner here. These both have basically the same gorgeous 1080p AMOLED screens and the same D-pad. So when you're getting a Mini, you're paying $70 more for a bit more power, a horizontal form factor, and the controls to play more 3D titles. But let's focus on the Classic here for a moment. While it actually is more advertised as a 4-button vertical handheld, they do offer one version, which is the Sega Saturn themed with 6 buttons. This immediately intrigued me and convinced me to buy one to check it out. Now, I've seen some videos have some problems with the 6-button Classic, but for me personally, I had no problem mapping these extra buttons in RetroArch so the different cores can use them, or map them in other emulators. And one of the first things I did was try out a 6-button fighting game to test it out, and honestly this is really cool. The handhelds that have stayed with me and become ones I use more than any other usually gave me an experience where I said, okay, that's cool as fuck, let's go. And playing fighting games on this did that for me. I mean, sure, the device is fairly small and these 6 buttons are quite close together, so you're bound to do an accidental input from time to time, but I'm totally going to be checking out more fighting games on this now. And one other aspect of the Classic that really stood out to me was just how good the speaker quality is. Like, the thing with Retroid for me is the quality of their devices can alter in really weird ways from device to device. Like, there is always something that is either a weird decision or splits people's opinion. Over their last few devices, their speakers have been pretty mid, but damn, does the Classic have a punchy speaker. Speaking of inconsistency, it was pretty unanimously agreed that the Mini had awfully loud buttons and they weren't interchangeable with the 4 or 5's buttons. So your only solace was a frustrating modification to trim the rubber membrane under the buttons, which when done right absolutely transforms the entire experience to a much better console. But here with the Classic, these buttons are very good. Now, I don't have the 4-button model to compare, but the 6 buttons layout has A, B, C, which are a little larger but have a slightly convex design that your thumbs groove into nicely. Then X, Y, Z that are just smaller, and I imagine are similar to what the 4's buttons are being, and they're just regular small buttons. They're not too loud either, and shouldn't be anything to worry about unless you game in bed a lot next to your partner at night. The Classic completely beats the retail Mini here, but if you do the mod to the buttons for your Mini right, then it's actually quieter than the Classic. I carefully cut the membrane quite flat and then used some white tack to hold the button to the membrane so they didn't wiggle. I'm really happy with the sound now. So far, the Classic is a clear winner with its price and speaker quality, so let's get into some of the main differences between the two. Well, the Classic has a lot similar to other popular handhelds with this form factor, such as the Miu Mini and the Trim UI Brick. So on the back of the device you have 4 back buttons in series, and they're extremely clicky, almost like clicking on a mouse. I don't have any main concerns about them, but they're clickier than I was expecting, but they do feel good to use. With devices like this, I usually don't find the L and R1 buttons very comfortable, so I usually invert my button configurations so the triggers and shoulders are swapped, and I can more comfortably use L2 and R2 for older consoles with shoulder buttons. The rest of the buttons are fairly standard, with a menu button that doubles as a back button, start and select, and the volume and power on the left. My only true complaint of this device is that the USB charging port, the audio jack, and the SD card are all on the top of the device. It's just a very odd position to put them, and I don't really like that they've done that. The Mini, however, is more like a regular console with its stacked shoulders and full range triggers. The shoulder buttons here are also quite clicky, so there's a very simple mod here where you place a small piece of thin card where the shoulder button clicks inside, and it keeps it functional but also extremely quiet. The analog sticks here are your regular Retroid pocket sticks and service well enough for devices of this size. As I've already reviewed the Mini, I won't go too into specifics here, but you can play Dreamcast, PS2 and GameCube on here, and it works very well in this form factor. Now you can play a fair amount of GameCube and PS2 on the Classic, but in its best case you're resorting to mapping the stick to the D-pad and using an on-screen C-stick as opposed to a physical one. So I can't say the Mini is better in its controls because it requires modifications to reach a point of greatness, but it offers a much more playable device for those early 3D generations. So I'm going to have to give it to the Mini here personally, as I feel it offers more for its price that is more functional. Let's just quickly go over the power specs here, because the Mini is the same as the Retroid Pocket 5 with its Snapdragon 865, and you can do a 4GB RAM swap too for more virtual RAM. If you're happy to play Switch on this screen or even stretch it out, then you're getting a ton more gaming out of this device. The Classic, however, has a G1 Gen 2, which sounds more impressive, but it's definitely not as powerful, and I think concessions you'll have to make with certain GameCube and PS2 games is to keep the scaling at 1x, and also whatever fixes to help improve the performance, just like the old days. It's reminding me of power similar to the base Retroid Pocket 4 perhaps, a bit better than the 3 Pluses, but without being a Mali device this time. So the Mini wins clear here, as you can definitely upscale and have smooth performance compared to the Classic. Next, let's go over some of the user experience. Starting with the Classic, I immediately had good vibes about the device. I think it helps as well knowing that for everything you're getting, it only costs $130, and that kind of translates to a happy purchase and happy gamer. Now I won't go over things like front ends and things like setting up buttons or how much of the screen you're using, but I'll just quickly mention here that I'm still using Pegasus for this Switch look with the theme Skyline OS++, which I've been quite enjoying on here. This thing immediately makes me want to play classic games that really pop on this AMOLED screen. I actually want to look more into MAME and Sega Saturn for more titles to enjoy, as I can totally see myself vibing with those more than anything else at the moment. Personally, I'm not too into using the shoulder buttons on devices like this. I think I actually like them a bit more functionally on the Miyoo Mini Plus and the TrimUI Brick, but they're by no means bad. I quite like that on this device. If I really wanted to, I could just map L and R in retro games to the 2 extra buttons on the front, and I'd be totally fine with that. PlayStation 1 on here is also going to be amazing. The extra buttons helps too for hotkeys if you want to put fast forward to something without having a hotkey enabler, since I'm using DuckStation. And the original DS also works great on here if you're happy to switch screens with a hotkey. I think at the end of the day, what this device can do really well is no surprise, as we've seen other handhelds do similar, but you have a couple more options for consoles to get into, and although I probably couldn't see myself doing GameCube and PS2 on here, it's certainly an option, and really makes that $130 price point compelling. But there really is nothing like this 6-button handheld out there right now, and that is a big yes for me, as I think we need more variety. And for me, this offers experiences, like with fighting games, that no other handheld can do at the moment. With the Retroid Pocket Mini, we are looking at a serious deviation compared to its original retail form last year. You've got a screen like the Classic, a mod to make the shoulders quieter, a mod to make the face buttons quieter, and the result, in my opinion, is a near perfect pocketable device. If I could do one more modification, it would be to have sticks that have deeper holes in them so they sit more flush with the device and wouldn't get in the way of going in your pocket more. But it's a small nitpick at this point. I'm also kind of more of a fan of the horizontal handheld. I just feel like it's naturally more comfortable for my hands, and I've said before that the Mini is surprisingly more comfortable than the Retroid Pocket 5. The fact that it has sticks means that you have access to more Android games if you needed that, but being able to jump into Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, PSP, GameCube, and PlayStation 2, knowing you won't have any controller issues, is definitely doing this thing a lot of favors. There's a lot more in common with the Flip 2 in this regard, and it's also a similar size that also makes it very pocketable, but it feels a little bulkier and heavier. And I think playing on the Mini is a nicer experience, but for this video I feel like the Classic and the Mini share more DNA than its bigger brothers. So is there a clear winner between the Retroid Pocket Classic and the Retroid Pocket Mini? For me, the Mini does edge it out. If I eliminate the price factor, I think in the end I'd feel like the Mini is the small pocketable device for me. But the Classic is new, and I want to highlight that for $129, this is a stunning little device where Retroid has made good choices in its development. The buttons feel nice, the sound is great, and there isn't really anything offensive or wrong about it unless you're not too into the look of the device. For its form factor, this is definitely one of the best of its kind that you can get today. And I'd recommend it over the Miyoo Minis and the Ambernic clones and even the TrimUI Brick. And I'll be honest, had I got the 4-button version, I don't think I would have had as much of a reaction to it other than it's a high quality device of its kind. But the 6-button device is exciting and gives it more of an identity, which I'm all about. There is really so much to talk about when it comes to these two devices. The Classic is a great debut, and the Mini's situation is unfortunate. But I hope they release the Mini again with its new screen and hopefully take the time to have quieter buttons. I could recommend one over the other for different situations, but for $129 the Classic is giving a lot for its price point. I'm not sure what's coming up this year with devices to look forward to, but off the top of my head, I'm waiting for the M-Con to release to see how nice it'll be for thinking about as a phone as a dedicated handheld. And I think it'd be fun to rank all of my pocketable devices, but I've got a ton of work coming up this month, so I'll see how it goes. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.